If you've ever been in the world of behavior analysis, you've definitely heard a bunch of terms thrown around. Behaviorism, EAB, ABA, and let's be honest, they can sound kind of the same. It is super easy to get them all mixed up, but they're actually very distinct, crucial parts of one big system. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what each one is, and more importantly, how they all fit together like puzzle pieces. So yeah, what is the real difference between all these things? How do you get from a philosophy to someone actually helping a child learn to communicate? That's the big question we're tackling today, and we're going to walk through it step by step. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big ideas, the philosophical foundation of behaviorism. Then we're going to put on our lab coats and check out the pure science with EAB. After that, we'll see how that science gets taken out of the lab and into the real world with ABA. And finally, we'll see it all in action with professional practice. It's a really clear path from a big idea all the way to real-world impact. Okay, first things first. Let's talk about the foundation. You can't build a house without a solid foundation, right? Same thing here. This is the core philosophy that everything else is built on. And that foundation is behaviorism. Now, it's so important to get this straight right off the bat. Behaviorism is not a practice, it's a philosophy. It's a way of looking at the world. It's the core belief that says behavior isn't some random, unknowable mystery. Nope. It's a natural event, just like gravity or photosynthesis, that we can actually observe and study scientifically. So what's at the heart of this philosophy? Well, a few big ideas. 1, that behavior follows rules. It's lawful, not just random chaos. 2, it's shaped by what's going on in the environment. This is why a behaviorist will skip fuzzy labels like stubbornness. Instead of saying a kid is just being naughty, they're going to look at what happened in the environment right before and right after the behavior. And thanks to B.F. Skinner's radical behaviorism, this view even includes our private stuff, our thoughts and feelings, not as the cause of our actions, but as more behavior that can be understood. So why does this all matter? Because this philosophy is the why. It's the reason we do what we do. It's the bedrock that the entire science of behavior analysis is built upon. Without it, the rest of the building just couldn't stand. Okay, so we've got our why. Now, how do we actually figure out the rules of behavior? How do we study it? Well, for that, we have to head into the lab. And this is where the experimental analysis of behavior, or EAB, comes in. If behaviorism is the philosophy, you can think of EAB as the basic, pure science. Its entire goal is to get into a super-controlled environment and discover the fundamental, universal laws of how behavior works. So when you think of EAB, you should be picturing exactly this, a classic lab setup. These experiments are done in really tightly controlled settings, often with animals, because it allows researchers to isolate one specific variable at a time. This is how we discovered the heavy hitters, the core principles like reinforcement and punishment. The goal here isn't to solve a social problem. It's pure science. Describe, predict, and control behavior. And why should we care about this lab stuff? Because EAB gives us the scientific goods. It gives us proof. It's how we know, with a ton of confidence, that a principle like reinforcement actually works before we even dream of using it to help a person out in the real world. So we have our philosophy, and we have our basic science from the lab. But what's the point of discovering all these principles if you can't use them, right? Well, that's where we need a bridge. And that bridge is applied behavior analysis. ABA takes those rock-solid principles that were discovered in the EAB lab and, applies them to solve real-world problems. The key phrase to remember here is socially significant behavior. We're not talking about just anything. We're talking about behaviors that truly matter to a person's quality of life. Things like communication, social skills, academics, and daily living skills. Now, ABA isn't just a random collection of strategies. It's actually guided by these 7 dimensions, which were laid out way back in 1968. Think of them like a quality control checklist. For something to be considered real ABA, it has to be applied to a meaningful problem, behavioral, so we can see and measure it, and analytic, so we can prove it's what's causing the change. It also has to be technological, so someone else can do exactly what you did, conceptually systematic, so it links back to those core principles, truly effective, and show generality, meaning the skills stick around. These dimensions keep it rigorous and scientific. So you can see why ABA is just so critical. It's the engineering step in the process. It takes the raw materials of pure science from the lab and turns them into reliable, effective technologies, interventions that can be used to make a real, lasting change in people's lives.
Okay, we're on the home stretch. We've got the philosophy, we've got the lab science, and we've got the applied science. Now for the final, and you could argue most important piece of the puzzle, putting it all into practice to actually help people.
This is professional practice. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's the boots on the ground work done every single day by board-certified behavior analysts and other trained professionals. This is the moment where all the theory and research and technology gets delivered directly to people. So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, practitioners are doing things like assessments to figure out why a behavior is happening. They're designing and implementing specific intervention plans. A huge part of the job is training parents, teachers, and caregivers. And they are constantly looking at data to make sure what they're doing is actually working. All of this is wrapped in a very strict ethical code to protect clients. And this really is what it's all for. Professional practice is the culmination of everything we've talked about. It's the point of impact, where abstract philosophy and lab findings become concrete actions that can literally change the trajectory of someone's life. All right, let's zoom back out for a second and pull all four of these domains together so we can really see how they form one complete, elegant system. I absolutely love this skyscraper analogy because it just makes so much sense. Think of behaviorism as the architect's philosophy, the grand vision for the building. EAB is the materials lab down in the basement, stress testing the steel and concrete to make sure they're strong. ABA is the engineering firm that takes those proven materials and designs a functional blueprint. And finally, professional practice, that's the construction crew on the ground, actually building the skyscraper so that people can live and work inside it. Or, if you want to look at it another way, just think of it as a logical flow. The philosophy gives us our lens for seeing the world. The basic research discovers the tools. The applied science figures out how to use those tools to create technology. And finally, professional practice delivers that technology as a service. See? Each step is built directly on the one before it. Now, probably the single biggest point of confusion for students is the difference between EAB and ABA. So let's just put it side by side. EAB happens in the lab, ABA happens in the real world. EAB is basic science, ABA is applied science. EAB's goal is to discover principles, ABA's goal is to solve problems. They are two sides of the very same scientific coin, totally distinct, but deeply connected. So, to wrap it all up in a neat little package, behaviorism is the why. It's our philosophy. EAB is the how behavior works under a microscope. ABA is the what we apply to real-world problems. And professional practice is the doing, actually ethically helping people. Why, how, what, and doing. That's the whole system. When you see it all weighed out like this, from the philosophical why all the way to the practical doing, you realize it's not just a collection of random techniques. It's a complete, comprehensive science. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Now that you see how all these pieces fit together, how does that change the way you think about behavior? Thanks for tuning in.